Hello and a very warm welcome to this evening's Innovation Roundtable on the topic of is storage, the silver bullet for target 450 gigawatts. Organized by Renew Power Center of Excellence, IIT Delhi in association and hosted by Renew Foundation, which is Renew Power's philanthropic arm. At Renew, we believe the power of dialogues and discussions really help develop an actionable roadmap on key socio-economic and environmental issues. Let's take a step back and just look at the year which has gone by. It has indeed been a very challenging year. We're still coming to terms with the devastation caused by this pandemic. And aren't we glad that a vaccine is in sight? And this year and this whole experience is hopefully keeping our fingers crossed coming to an end. Amidst this chaos, if there was one bright spot, I'm sure all of you'll agree, it's been the sector we all operate in, are associated with in many ways, and that is the renewable energy sector. Today, as we all look to build and build a green recovery, it is indeed required that we build a resilient and inclusive communities, inclusive societies. Sustainability and clean energy will need to be at the heart of our rebuilding strategies and policies. The next wave of growth we all enter in this sector, like in any other, will be spurred by disruptions, changes, breakthroughs in technologies. And this has really put the spotlight in what a lot of us today on this panel do, which is research, innovation in climate, action in climate, clean tech, and clean energy. India is over the last few years, from 2012 onwards, approximately, I would say, has seen a phenomenal growth in this sector, in renewable energy, triggered by favorable policy by a government, which is always very important. And at Renew, we are excited to be actively contributing as a thought leader, as a partner, as an executor on the ground to accelerate this transition from polluting fossil fuels to addressing the nation's rising energy demands in climate compatible ways. So we understand that for clean energy sector in India to maintain its growth, R&D is important, and it's important that we don't operate in silos. We interact, we engage and learn from each other and contribute to what we are doing. And this is exactly the purpose of this conversation today. With this in mind, a few years ago, about 3 years ago, Renew Power set up the Center of Excellence, and Dr. Bhyankar is here from IIT Delhi in partnership with IIT Delhi. And as I look back, it has been 3 years of eventful work. We have worked at the center, and it's shaped up quite well as we've conducted research in various areas, strengthening the grid, exploring effects of AQI on solar generation, engaging the youth in providing sustainability leadership awards. We've signed MOUs with various universities and other institutions around the world. And we have made collaboration and contributing towards innovation the way we do things at the center. We're very, very delighted about this partnership, and we look forward to many more such partnerships. We have also worked with Stanford Williams here, Pre-Court Center, and are engaged in identifying ways in which we can work together in this area we're talking about today, which is storage. And we are also very excited about that. So as we march ahead, we must not forget that the waste disposal associated with all that we use in the renewable space and how we do it and how we're committed to it is a serious matter, and we should commit to it as well. The other promising emergence as the sector grows and as the storage area grows is the emergence of young entrepreneurs. We at Renew are committed to supporting them, mentoring them, I, along with the UNDP, have identified a program for women in clean energy, and we've set up an accelerator program. We're very excited about that. And there are many other ways in which we can advance entrepreneurship in this area. Um, the key stakeholders in the battery manufacturing ecosystem in India include material suppliers, battery manufacturers, vehicle manufacturers, research institutes, and think tanks. It's important we all work and collaborate with each other, and this is going to be very critical over the course of the next few years as this grows. Over the next hour or so, we're going to discuss all of these issues and get some fantastic insights from policymakers, thinkers, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion. And I'm sure everybody who signed in, I believe 250 plus registrations from around the world, which is very, very, very encouraging, shows a lot of interest in this sector. So we are fortunate to have with us a very, very elite set of panelists and experts. Let me start by introducing Professor Abhyankar, an NTPC Chair Professor of Electrical Engineering from IIT Delhi. He's a member of the World Economic Forum and is also an expert member of various committees and task forces established by Central Electricity Regulatory Commissions. We also have Professor Mitra from IIT Mumbai. Dr. Mitra received his PhD degree from Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore and a post-doc in lithium-ion battery research. He's currently leading the battery research team in National Center for Solar Photovoltaic Research and Education, funded by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy at IIT Mumbai. Professor William Chu is joining us from the Precourt Institute for Energy at Stanford. He's an associate professor of material science and engineering there and a faculty scientist at SLAC National Accelerator Laboratory. He also co-directs Stanford's Storage X initiative. William was named as one of the top 35 innovators under the age of 35. Wow. By MIT's Technology Review in 2012. And he has helped to develop a machine learning based method that slashes the battery testing period. Very interesting. Congratulations on such a fantastic background and profile, William. We also have Dr. Reddy, AGM at SECI. He heads the Technical and Hybrid Projects Division and is working on renewable energy projects with storage, next generation RE projects, and green hydrogen. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Reddy. Dr. Valavalkar, President and MD of Customized Energy Solutions India Private Limited and President of India Energy Storage Alliance. He has played an instrumental role in shaping up the advanced chemistry cell battery manufacturing program for NITI Aayog during 2019-20 and has also worked on drafting the National Energy Storage Mission and Battery Manufacturing Mission for MNRE and NITI Aayog. Welcome and thank you for joining us. We have Mayank Bansal, who heads strategy at Renew Power, and he has more than 20 years of experience in consulting. Recently, he was at A.D. Kearney and McKinsey. We have Ivan, who's the CTO at Renew and a moderator for this evening. Ivan is a postgraduate engineer from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, and has handled assignments in industry and at Renew in his present role as CTO of one of India's largest IPPs. He manages technology-related areas in the area of PV, wind, storage, and transmission. I guess the stage is set for what promises to be an engaging and insightful next 1 hour. So without much ado, I'd like to invite Ivan to take over and start our discussions. Thank you.
Thanks, Vaishali. And Vaishali has been the guiding force behind the ReNew Foundation and has helped us to, get this whole everything that we do on CSR, public outreach, everything in Renew. So he's been a real guiding force and always been an inspiration for all the renewers. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. And without much ado, let me start today's program. And the discussion that we have at hand is storage the silver bullet for target 450 gigawatt. So I want to step a little back and look at what has happened in the Indian renewable energy sector in the last 10 years. So as on today, the Indian's wind and solar deployed capacity stands about 73 gigawatt, which is fourth in the world after China, US, and Germany, which is 19.7% of the total installed power capacity in India of 372 gigawatt. Now, POSCO data shows that the percentage of renewable energy mix in the energy consumption ranges between 6 to 10% every month, which means we are not utilizing the entire renewable energy generation capacity that we have. So present situation is that every unit of energy that is generated is fed into the grid, as there is no storage, large-scale stationary storage which has been deployed. And if during hours of excess generation, there is curtailment. Now, also when during when the supply exceeds the demand, there are frequency related issues, and the frequency increases or decreases, and this may cause grid collapse and outages. Large-scale storage can actually help shift these peaks of demand and supply, and also to stabilize the grid frequency. So, therefore, this question of whether storage and is the solution to the target 450 gigawatt that we have in mind at 2030 remains to be debated and discussed, and that's what we're going to do today. So in 2030, what it will look like? If we have about 450 gigawatt of solar and wind deployed, the energy consumption will increase to about 2,400 billion units per annum from the present 1,300 billion units. So consumption is almost going to be doubled. And hopefully, there will be 27 gigawatt of energy storage capacity, which will be deployed for 4 hours, which means about 108 gigawatt hour of energy storage will be deployed. So what are the factors that will drive this this condition? So obviously, to get energy storage playing in the market, there will be the requirement of identifying alternate revenue streams from the existing just peak shifting or grid stabilization applications. So alternate revenue streams can bring in more market play and more investor interest in this sector. Cost reduction of storage is another big area, which can drive this. I mean, present cost, which is around 250 for lithium-ion dollars per kilowatt hour, can go down potentially to about $70 per kilowatt hour. And probably a couple of policy-related aspects like arbitrage of peaking power versus non-peaking power, and round-the-clock type of tenders, which can actually encourage new players to enter the market to discover new strategies and cost benchmarks. So that's the background, and I'll probably now start by asking the first question to this esteemed panel. And the first question that we would like to talk about is storage technologies which has matured exponentially in terms of usability, reliability, and cost over the last 1 decade. Now, given the use cases of several technologies deployed across the world, the global requirements vis-a-vis the Indian market usability is yet an untested area. What, according to you, are the key differentiators in technology purely from a tactical standpoint that you think would consider be the best choice? So this question probably I'll first ask Rahul, and probably Rahul, if you can open the discussion with a little bit of introduction. I would like all the panelists to talk a little bit about their own work on storage and then answer the question.
Sure. Thank you very much, Ivan, and thank you, Vaishali, for inviting and hosting us for this interesting panel, and also the leadership which Renew is playing in adopting energy storage in India. So first of all, I'd like to thank entire Renew team for the work which you guys are doing. In terms of my background, I sort of got involved with energy storage almost by accident in 2004. When Electric Power Research Institute in US approached customized energy solutions for a collaborative project looking at role of emerging energy storage technologies in electricity market, because at that time there were many of these new technologies. In fact, lithium-ion was not even considered for grid applications, were getting considered for commercialization, but with the electricity markets coming up, it was not sure how these technologies can play and how can utilities start investing into these. So that was sort of a one-off project we started, but here I am 17 years later, having worked with now more than 120 companies in last 17 years, have looked at more than 15 different types of energy storage technologies, right from pumped hydro, compressed air energy storage, mechanical storage systems, to all forms of energy storage, electrochemical storage technologies, as well as thermal technologies. I have become a believer in this because the way I see it is energy storage technologies have the ability to transform not just the electric grid, but also the mobility area. And there are, with the advances which are happening with at Stanford University, at Carnegie Mellon, at IITs, at ISC, and many other research labs, there is a very good chance that many of these technology breakthroughs can be commercialized within next 4 or 5 years. And with each of these new technologies coming in, it is not that it is only competing with existing energy storage technologies. Actually, all these technologies together are competing with the current fossil fuel driven world, and it is going to enable us to move towards a more cleaner environment and sustainable ecosystem in a much faster way. So the way typically I see it is not as much a competition, but more of a collaboration with the industry to move towards a more cleaner environment and sustainable driven ecosystem. Now
Okay.
to your hello.
Yeah, in between you
Yeah,
were.
now to your question about what are the key technologies which are important for India. India traditionally has been dominated by two storage technologies. One is pumped hydro on the grid side, and lead acid batteries on the consumer side. But this is something which is poised to change very rapidly. Already in last 3-4 years, many segments like telecom towers have taken a lead in adopting lithium-ion battery technologies. And because of the superior energy density and the continuous reduction in the cost curve, lithium-ion batteries are expected to dominate the both grid and mobility side of storage for coming decade. But at the same time, there are certain key differences with the Indian requirement, particularly the temperature tolerance. Also, there are many areas where we need possibly longer duration storage technologies for supporting the grid or for supporting microgrid and off-grid applications, where there are many technologies, including flow batteries, including metal air batteries, or other forms of technologies such as sodium-based batteries are also being seen as a viable solution. So we see that depending on the application, there are different technologies which can find the right use case. And that is something which is very important for project developers or users to understand, that it is not just that it is one technology, but you need to look at not just capital cost, but you need to look at energy efficiency, you need to look at the cycle life, the fast charge discharge capability, and all these parameters can present different opportunities for different technologies.
Thank you. Thanks, Rahul. Dr. Reddy, would you like to comment on what are the key differentiators in the Indian context?
Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting me for this forum, and I'm glad to participate here. Uh, Coming to means a brief introduction about what the work what we are doing. So we are at the forefront of renewable implementation in the country. So we are most worried than any other in the country to promote the renewables to that target of 450 gigawatt. So right from the beginning, when we started in 2012-13, we have been working on storage technologies along with renewables. Initially, we started working on smoothening of renewables. Some way it couldn't work out, but in recent years, last year onwards, we are working on grid integration issues, and the target by 2022 or 2030 targets are there. How we have to integrate with the grid. The capacity of 300 gigawatt solar and 150 gigawatt wind by 2020 is a big task to integrate into the grid, where the demand will be around 200 gigawatt only. So how to manage the capacity? All the 300 gigawatt generation during the noon we cannot absorb. So, and the balancing plants also, they must run at their technical minimum of at least 40%. So we are left out with 60% of the 200 gigawatts. So that will be around uh, maybe around 120, 150 gigawatt. So 50% of the generation only we can straight away absorb. But other 50%, obviously, invariably, we have to shift to peak shift, or we have to shift to the through storage only. Storage is inevitable for future RE capacity additions. So we realized it, and we are working on some different type of tenders also in the RE front in the hybrid projects. So you means many of you might have been came to know that Renew is one of the successful bidder also in that. We are working on round the clock renewables, and also we are working on means peak power tenders, and also we are working on there is a intermediary band requirement in the grid. For that also we are working. We not only means completely relying on IPPs as a central government public sector undertaking. We want to lead from the front, and we are investing also in such type of projects. Right now, we released a tender for development of a project in Chhattisgarh, where 150 megawatt hour of battery will be deployed for peak shifting applications and to meet the evening peak load. And in Leh Ladakh also, we are planning for a similar type of project, where with solar will be means power will be provided for our 16 for about 16 hours throughout the day. And in the other project, we means unfortunately we couldn't award, and we are reworking on the project in Ramagiri, in Andhra Pradesh, where the solar wind hybrid project will be there. That again will focus. We are focusing on to provide the firm power for around 14 to 16 hours for the discom needs. And the requirement is the delivery is there from morning 6 to evening 10 a.m. 10 p.m. So that also we are working. We means World Bank is also working with us funding on these issues with some grants. So we are hopeful that we'll close these projects in maybe in this financial year. Okay, that is these are the developments happening at SECI side in the energy storage. I am leading the technical division, where most of the technical developments happening in our division. Okay, that is, and coming to the question, we always believe that market will decide the technology. Okay, so we keep all our tenders means technology neutral. So any technology is welcome for this tenders. Actually, what we are working, but at this moment, everyone is eyeing for lithium-ion. But what I personally feel that lithium-ion will be there in the market for maybe 4 or 5 years from now for the large-scale applications, for the long duration applications. The maturity of flow or other technologies for long duration, they will slowly take over the lithium-ion front. Lithium-ion may remain for the EV and distributed network applications, where flow cannot be there. Means smaller sizes uh, cannot be deployed in flow batteries. So maybe down the line, maybe 5 years down the line, EV and distributed systems will more focus on the lithium-ion. And also the recent studies by Hydrogen Alliance also showing that the amount of lithium is reserves are not sufficient to meet the demand. Okay, so we cannot completely depend on lithium also. And hydrogen is again emerging area. So by 2026 or 27 onwards, I think it will be a different path in the energy storage area. Okay,
Thanks. Thanks, Dr. Reddy. That was very insightful. And congratulations for taking the lead in this sector from the government side. My next question, which is a little tricky one, because the choice of technology that we see today, because we are in very early stages of adoption. So we are really kind of experimenting with several new technologies. Dr. Reddy talked about lithium and flow and hydrogen. So there is always a technology obsolescence or risk, or technology, sort of becoming redundancy risk. So I would like to pose this question that to the two experts on this panel, Dr. Chu and Professor Mitra. Do you think this technology choice can be static, or will it remain static? Or do you think it will evolve over the next 10 years? Not just the electrochemical storage, but even non-electrochemical storage. So, Professor Chu, maybe you can take the first shot at it, and then Professor Mitra gets the next question. Can answer. Yeah.
Ivan, thank you very much for that question. So maybe first, let me introduce myself a bit more. I've been working on the chemistry side of energy storage and conversion for about 15 years. And I've seen a lot of technologies come and go, especially at the early stage. So I'm very excited to talk about this question. Before I do that, I just also want to mention that I represent the broader energy storage community here at Stanford University. And this is really one of the birthplace of lithium-ion batteries. My colleagues have been developing battery technology since the 1970s. So this is a really exciting and very historical aspect for Stanford. So Ivan, to sort of tackle your question, I think it makes sense to think about, how will we visualize the progression of energy storage technology? And I think we can really use the cost learning curve as one of the ways to think about how static and how dynamic it is. So if you look at lithium-ion battery, even just 10 years ago, your cost curve is sitting at about $2,000 kilowatt hour. And then I think, as was mentioned by the panel, folks are very skeptical about whether it can be deployed beyond, say, applications in consumer electronics. And if you observe that cost learning curve, you will see the trajectory, right? So your cost learning per year. So the question regarding how static and how dynamic it is really the slopes for all of these technologies. So you look at that plot and you say, where is flow battery, right, in terms of today's cost, and what is its cost learning curve? Then you begin to see sort of the promising horses in the race when it comes to different technology. So if you look at, say, a window of 5 years, in terms of emerging technology, so I'm not talking about pump hydro, I'm talking about hydrogen, I'm talking about flow batteries, I'm talking about other potentially low-cost storage options. They're really not hovering within the 5-year time period of lithium-ion. So I think it is quite obvious in the lithium-ion space, whether you consider the capital investment or the levelized cost, is not going to be challenged at the scale of its deployment today in the next 5 years. But if you now zoom out to about 10 years, then you can see, well, there are many technology that has caught up to where lithium-ion battery was 10 years ago. So I think the question is really a time frame. So I think we have a very safe period in terms of deployment in the next 5 years. But in terms of 10 years, and certainly looking out to 20 years, the technology mix is very wide open. And so there is not necessarily a winner out to 20 years or 10 years. and as I think was Rahul was mentioning earlier, the cost floor is set for lithium-ion. So the cost learning curve is definitely plateauing on the bottom. It's challenging to see it go beyond, say, $60 a kilowatt hour. So this is being agreed upon as the limit. So the trajectory is really what matters here in the cost learning. So let me say just maybe two more things. The acceleration of the cost learning curve for lithium-ion batteries, I think, derived from two very unique aspects. One is lithium-ion battery benefited from extremely willing beachhead markets in consumer electronics, right? Think all the way from your big mobile phones to today's smart devices. That really has fueled industry. That's the industry that could pay $2,000 a kilowatt hour 10 years ago. And also the requirements are not as strict as, say, stationary storage in other areas, for example, longevity. And this is what has empowered the improvement in batteries over the past 10 years in capacity, in lifetime, in cost. And this beachhead market is, I think, what got lithium-ion battery here today. This beachhead market does not necessarily exist for other competing technologies. So this would be one dominating economic driving force. So are there specialty markets, regional markets, that we can see as testbed for deployment and also ways to drive down the cost? I think that's number one, to think about what will be the driver. The second unique aspect of lithium-ion battery that made it very successful is it's a very distributed device. The cost down of lithium-ion didn't come from having a very large deployment. It came from having a very large factory. So you see this term used very often, gigafactory. So for many technology, there won't be gigafactories. You will not be scaling up in the factory. You'll be scaling up in the site of deployment. So that's also very different. If you think about the technology, so pump hydro is one of them. We're not manufacturing pump hydro. We are deploy them at very large scale. We're making the generators, a few of them, but we're making them very large. So I think these two characteristics are very important when thinking about on the cost learning trajectory. So the short answer, Ivan, to your question is, I think in the next 5 years and possibly 10, I think the picture at the deployment side will be quite static. But on the R&D side, as people look toward 10 and 20 years, it's very rich and much thing will be tried. But these two things I mentioned.
Great. Thanks, Will. That was a great perspective. And Rahul, you raised your hand. You have a point to add very quickly?
Yeah, thank you, Ivan. And sorry, Sagar, for jumping in, but I think William covered it very well. Just one thing I wanted to add to what William said, that a lot of time we club lithium-ion as one technology, but over last 30 years, lithium-ion has itself seen 6, 7, 8 different flavors. And what we see it is maybe today's lithium-ion technology will have a tough competition from some of the emerging technology. But at the same time, there is so much innovation happening on cathode, anode side, the other electrolyte materials, that we see lithium-ion as a technology continuously evolving as compared to what happened with maybe say lead acid, which is a century-old technology. There has been very few major breakthroughs there. So we think that definitely if someone is looking at investing in right now the next generation factories with lithium-ion batteries, they should not be worrying about this, because again, the market is big enough where many technologies will coexist. And if people are looking at, okay, what happens to my investment in a factory, there will be new factories which will get built, which will adopt new technologies, but not suddenly there is a one day where suddenly entire market will shift to a different technology. So just wanted to add that point.
Yeah, thanks, Rahul, for that. Lithium-ion really is a basket of many different chemistry, membrane, and other technologies bunched together. So absolutely fair point. Professor Mitra, back to you. Do you think the technology choice is going to remain static? It's going to evolve over time? And what do you see happening?
Okay, thank you, Ivan and the organizers. This is a nice topic. So when I see the topic, really, I was thinking that this is an interesting topic to discuss as a storage, research storage worker. So I started working lithium-ion battery at least 15 years back. So I worked from the materials. So now I'm an electrochemist in the background. And I started working from materials, and right now, let's say last 3 years, I'm working on the technology side, so how to make the cells in a real sense, and then see how they demonstrate in the real field. That's my background. So come back to your question, so that I'm also echoing that what Professor William is saying. Maybe few years from the now will be static, because it's going towards the lithium, and lithium is in terms of performance, cost, I don't think anybody can come near to this. And several new way of lithium batteries are coming, lithium ion batteries are coming, lithium metal batteries are going to come. So that it's very difficult to compete with that type of performance based, even cost based batteries with the near future. So maybe 5 to 7 years is very difficult, but the way the research is going on other batteries, technical point, maybe theoretically may not be possible. Lithium is lithium, so we cannot jump on it. Other battery cannot come in a metal ion based. In that sense, it's not possible. So I can think this, as per my opinion, gigawatt renewables always need a gigawatt of storage. So that's a main criteria you should think about. So if you look at, so people do plotting different, like 4 categories of plot people do to see which one is good. So let's say cost versus technology maturity. You can see one plot, cost versus, then power output versus energy stored. Another is power rating by discharge time. And then capital cost versus unit energy. So this 4 plot, if you put it in one plot and see what are the technologies are there. So you can see only 2 or 3 technologies. One is like a compressed air, other one is pump hydro. These 2 technologies are actually catching all the parameters and it is suitable in the right spot. Then third one is actually lithium-ion battery, and 4th one is thermal storage. So, but if you compare all these storage technology, what we know in the market or in the technical way, all are different each other. It is not at all, technically it is not comparable at all. So all are different. But we need to compare anyway. So as per my opinion, if you look at the size perspective, only size, up to 20 megawatt scale size, lithium is nowhere, nobody can compete. Then a price point performance.
Great. Thanks, Professor Mitra. Moving from technology to policy side, and my question to Mayank on this, that India's plan to deploy 100 plus gigawatt hour of storage by 2030 is definitely a huge ask. Now, what are the federal policy support that you think are relevant for integration of such a large amount of stationary storage into the grid? And that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, there are certain untapped areas like merchant markets to energy storage, which US has institutionalized, like something with something like called FERC protocol, FERC 841. So do you think India has a scope to play in that kind of a merchant market as well? That's the second part of the question. Yeah, Mayank.
Sure. Thanks, Ivan. So, I think just to get to it completely right away, and I think Renew, I hope needs no introduction in this group, but just for just ensuring that everybody knows about Renew, we are one of the largest developers in the country, completely. I would say wedded to the renewables cause, and therefore the interest in storage, which, as Dr. Reddy I think pointed out earlier, is definitely one of the most important ingredients to ensuring a higher renewable penetration in the grid. So I think from a policy angle and from a developer angle, and as well as from a grid operator angle, the way at least I see storage, and we've all spoken about the fact that there are multiple technologies available out there. There's different learning curves on each of these technologies. I think the way at least we think about it is that your storage policy needs to be completely technology agnostic. We should understand and appreciate that storage will always be an adder to cost of power. It's not a generating source, so it'll always be a cost adder, and therefore, to a certain extent, it needs to be minimized to the extent possible. And obviously, the cost of storage, the way it is going down, needs to be added only at specific points of time, wherever needed. And at least we are a strong believer that you should let that happen only once there is an economic case for that storage addition. It could be in multiple applications, as we've been seeing. It could be in peak shifting, it could be in frequency modulation. As we discussed, even each technology would have different applications. So be it. But the only point is that from a policymaker's perspective, at least what we've seen is that it ideally should be left to the market to really see what is the right business case for storage, and it should add where it makes sense and at the cost where it makes sense. The other point to keep in mind is really that while we think of storage as the only sort of solution to renewables, there is obviously there's a low marginal cost of excess energy that renewable plants produce. But there could be alternate uses for that. So there's also innovation happening, by the way, in using that excess energy beyond storage. Right? So it's not necessary that you have to store that energy to utilize that. And which is why I think, going back to your second part of the question, I think, market is absolutely the right way to integrate storage. And we've seen that in a lot of other geographies. And, what I think the policymakers need to focus on is really to ensure that there are clear frameworks on how will storage get added into the grid, right? So whether it is, how will the transmission charges work, so it is more about the grid participation of storage that needs to be clearly laid out. But otherwise, there's no other support that really is storage. There's no real push. You don't need to really push that. There has to be storage into the grid.
Sure.
Let that be figured out by the markets.
Sure. Fantastic. I think that's the right way. Rahul, you've been part of the National Energy Storage Mission, and do you have made anything, any such recommendations to the government when you drafted that the policy on market use of storage?
Yeah, no, so this is again a very important question and very close to our heart. In fact, my PhD at Carnegie Mellon was on looking at economics of energy storage in electricity markets. And I worked right from 2006 to 2015 on actually even supporting many of the rule changes which happened in US markets. So not just the FERC Order 841, but starting much earlier with FERC Order 890, which opened distributed demand response and non-generation technologies to provide ancillary services, or FERC Order 840, FERC Order 1000, which opened up transmission sector. So there are many such, I think, steps which are required. And I think we have been working very closely with CERC, MNRE, MOP, CEA on getting some of these rules and regulations in place. At the same time, I think in the Indian context, I think sometimes, again, as a company, Customized Energy Solutions, we are a complete believer in the role of a competitive markets, and we believe that markets should determine this. But when we are looking at, especially in the Indian context, about should we wait for markets to evolve and should we let just the price discovery on the market to determine the energy storage deployment, I think that is actually a way of people just trying to avoid taking hard decisions. Frankly, right now, even after more than a decade of opening up energy market, right now the volume which gets traded in the energy market is hardly 5%. So hardly any investment decisions are happening based on the energy markets and the price signal which are coming from it, because majority of the market on the distribution side, on the PPAs, it is completely controlled by bilateral contracts. So I think we should avoid just using this as a market development as an excuse for delaying deployment of storage. And it is clearly needs to be driven by the economics of it. And there are many applications right now where we are taking decisions, we are issuing other tenders, rival auctions, where we are going to invest in projects which are going to survive next 20 years without considering storage as it. So what we as the India Energy Storage Alliance has been advocating is, yes, policy and regulatory structure is important, and we should get to the right market mechanisms for where storage can compete. But at the same time, if right now you're doing procurement in a bilateral contracts way or just in a reverse auction way, even allow storage technologies to participate on those. Like for example, ancillary services. In 2017, CRC had decided to start procuring of ancillary services. Last 3 years, the ancillary services have been protected as a domain just for thermal storage and hydro projects. And CRC has not yet allowed energy storage to actually competitively bid against these incumbent technologies. And in fact, even after 3 years of pilot, we are just saying that these technologies can provide synchronous reserve and not even touched on the frequency regulation and fast response support, which is really essential. Right now in India, we have grid frequency fluctuating from 49.6 to 50.3, and we are not taking any decisions on that and just being happy that 15-minute average frequency is within certain band. So I think there are a lot of opportunities where we don't need to wait for markets to evolve. Under the current existing procurement frameworks, we need to allow storage technologies to compete in a technology agnostic way, and that will drive the market demand. But if we just keep on waiting for these market rules to evolve, then we are going to miss a huge opportunity, not just for deployment, but also for manufacturing, because without these projects coming up, the investors are not going to get the right signal.
Great. I think very valid point. And I saw Professor Abhyankar raise his hand. He probably he's an expert on transmission side and transmission and distribution side. But of course, there are many applications where transmission infrastructure services can be augmented by storage. So, but if you have to make a point on this, and then going to the next question, probably you can take that as well, is how do you think the discoms are suited for two of the key applications of storage that we see today, that is curtailment reduction and energy arbitrage? Professor Abhyankar. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Right. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ivan Saha, and thank you, Vaishali ji, for having me here. I work in the area of power systems, steady state analysis, optimization, etc. So it's great to hear from the experts in battery technology talking about the technology aspects and cost and all that. So thank you for inviting me to this webinar. Coming to the question on the DISCOM related storage, DISCOM embedded storage, talking specifically about Indian condition, it needs to be seen how much impact these DISCOM storages would have on this 450 gigawatt target. I'm talking in the context of 450 gigawatt target when compared to utility scale storages. Unless and until a certain ecosystem is created by bringing in appropriate policy and associated regulations in place. So that is absolutely necessary in my opinion. The main motivation for DISCOMs to install storages would be energy arbitrage. This is my opinion. And however, to make that energy arbitrage thing workable, make it effective, DISCOMs would require larger size storage capacities, and hence they'll require higher capital expenditure for the same. And given the fiscal fitness of various DISCOMs is concerned, that needs to be seen thoroughly. Now, in order to manage the grid at 450 gigawatt penetration, and in order to harness the entire potential of RE sources, every megawatt of ancillary support would count. And this is exactly where this DISCOM storages can play a major role. By creating appropriate framework, we can expose DISCOM storages to different opportunities of revenue generation. For example, they can take part in various ancillary supports like frequency regulation or act as fast reserves, etc. However, to accomplish this, a market setup is required. So I'm echoing the same point, Mayank, perhaps Rahul, where these commodities can be made available on competitive basis. Okay, so action needs to be taken now. That would create appropriate signal for storage DISCOMs. Also, the transmission system operator should be given direct access to control these devices in order to make this very effective, right? And this can be facilitated through appropriate framework for TSO and DSO coordination. Now, this gives rise to another topic of discussion, whether TSO should directly control storage devices or there should be an aggregator for the same. And of late, there has been a lot of discussion on creating a new entity called DSO, Distribution System Operator, who could, become the aggregator and can interact with TSO to facilitate ancillary services provided by the DISCOM storages. So there are various models being discussed, and we should start firming up on those concepts at this stage. So in nutshell, we must create an opportunity and associated regulatory framework for DISCOM embedded storages to earn revenue by providing ancillary services to make them viable. Back to you, Mr. Ivan.
Yeah, thanks. Dr. Reddy, you would like to comment on SECI's thought process on both these points, like curtailment, reduction, and energy arbitrage, as well as whether SECI is also thinking about opening merchant markets for storage.
Yes. Actually, I'd like to comment on the policy related thing. Actually, I feel that some of the policies means provisions given for renewables need to be withdrawn to promote the storage market. Let us say, offtake guarantee is there, must-run status is there. Until unless must-run status is there, the RE developers cannot focus on the storage. Okay, that need to be taken off. And the other provisions like the back down compensation by the DISCOMs also is there. That is one thing that need to be taken out. And also, I think by 2023, the what is this ISTS waiver will go off. That I think this couple of things will be the drivers for the storage market. Then only every developer also will feel to develop the projects in different way to push their power into the better way, okay, to the maximum level. That is one thing. And coming to the DISCOMs, I think DISCOMs at this moment, many of the DISCOMs, they are not in good health. They cannot invest more on the storage. And also, I believe that storage at means always the question is that storage to be at a grid side or storage to be at the generation side. What we feel is that in SECI, storage at generation side will have more advantage, so that we can improve the PLF of a project, and we can, even the simple solar project we are planning to develop with PLF more than 55-60%, okay, like that, and the hybrid projects also. So that way the load and transmission network will reduce. So what we propose is that the storage should be the part of the RE projects. Then only we can get considerable capacity and penetration of RE with ease.
Thanks, Dr. Reddy. The next question is to Will, and you are an expert on storage degradation, and StorageX has years of experience on degradation models and degradation mechanisms and predicting degradation in large scale storage. So, what according to you, how should Indian IPPs strategize to reduce resource loss from capacity degradation of stationary energy storage systems?
Ivan, this is a very good question, very near and dear to my research. I think this is a very complex question. So I think first you have to really think about what does it mean in the India context. So you ask degradation and battery lifetime and energy storage lifetime in the Indian context. I can think of many things. Temperature is one of them. And sorry if I'm naive to all the salient details here. I think what one has to think about is the trade-off. In particular, the trade-off with respect to the levelized cost of energy storage. So let me take temperature as one example. If temperature is a concern for a particular technology, and indeed it is for, say, lithium-ion and many of the electrochemical technology. Then you have to think about the cost, not in terms of degradation necessarily, but in terms of the cost necessary to mitigate the degradation. So in that case, for lithium-ion batteries, for example, what is important then, it is the thermal management. How much are you paying for thermal management? And actually, it turns out at today's lithium-ion battery cost, the thermal management cost is not as high as you think, especially if not a precise regulation is required. So I think once you understand the economic trade-off, then that becomes easy to think about how to deploy it. Secondly, degradation and lifetime is not just on one parameter, it's on several parameters, and they're all interrelated. So when it comes to temperature, another important factor is the depth of discharge. So when you utilize the battery's full capacity, then it's very sensitive to temperature. But if you narrow it down even just by 10% or 20%, then the sensitivity decreases. So one really can think about the optimization opportunity for the operating envelope. So the operating envelope in India could be very different, and you have to pay a cost there in terms of the levelized cost. So I think this is a very rich area of ongoing research, is really to map the degradation to the cost in terms of the capital requirement, for example, cooling, and also to the operating envelope. So I think once you understand that, then we can really come back and answer your question, which is, well, what does it mean and how sensitive it is and what price do we have to pay to make it work? I think this is the engineer's mindset.
Great. I think that's the right perspective. I think that's obviously degradation is something which is also we are looking at closely, as ReNew is planning to set up several pilots on this for preparing ourselves for large-scale deployment. So that's something that we are planning to delve into in more details. We have heard about most of the aspects, and in a few fleeting sentences, we've heard about cost. And with the way that the cost reductions have happened, and Rahul talked about, Rahul or Will, I think you talked about $63 per kilowatt hour is the kind of agreed theoretical limit of lithium-ion. So with that happening and the whole, manufacturing infrastructure based out of China or Far East for lithium-ion, do you think it still makes sense? This question whoever wants to answer it, you're free to jump in, but preferably maybe we start with maybe Mayank and Rahul to comment on this. Do you think it still is relevant for Indian manufacturers to get involved in battery manufacturing and achieve that kind of benchmark cost numbers, which are quite a tall ask, if you ask me, right now, because we really are at a very initial early stage.
Rahul, you want to start on this one?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, happy to go for it. I think I am on a spot here because obviously I am the one who have been working last 5 years to convince everyone from the industry to the private.
So the idea is to make you comfortable, Rahul.
Yes. So no, I feel this is absolutely necessary. In fact, I feel we have lost actually 2 years because somewhere in between, I think policymakers got a recommendation that, oh, let's focus on just assembling for another 5 years and then look at cell manufacturing. And with that, actually, we have lost a huge opportunity which actually Europe has captured. So if you see right now in Europe, there is more than 500 gigawatt hour of manufacturing investments are right now taking place. If we had actually a little bit 2 years ahead, we could have had at least like maybe 20-30% of those investments. So rather than right now hoping for getting a 50 gigawatt hour manufacturing in 2025, the original roadmap which IESA put forward back in March 2016 was we should aim at least getting 10 gigawatt hour manufacturing in India by 2020. And if that had happened, it could have actually enabled a lot more industry academic collaboration, like what Will mentioned, that Stanford or at Binghamton University, at University of Texas, and other things are happening. For the academic research to actually prosper, you need a vibrant ecosystem on the absorption capacity on the industry as well. And we have already lost those 2-3 years. So now it is actually I feel is the last opportunity for us as a industry. And thankfully, actually, with the leadership taken by Shri Amitabh Kant and direct involvement of Prime Minister, I think we have now a production link incentive program, which is perhaps the best ever opportunity which Indian industry has to catch up on this area. The incentive is structured in a way where it provides opportunity for India to adopt advanced technology, because without this, I know that many of the companies who are even looking at getting into manufacturing, their focus was on looking at just focus on the commodity, the cheapest investment on the capital, and focusing on that. But this production link incentive program for advanced chemistry sale has turned it around, where the better the type of chemistry you can manufacture in India, the higher incentive you can get, and it could go as high as $30 per kilowatt hour, which when we'll talk about sort of a manufacturing price getting down to 60, that's like a complete game changer. And it de-risk the investment which will happen in India almost completely, because there are many studies which have done which shows right now, in fact, that as compared to investing in Europe, China has less than 5% cost advantage. So if there is a new gigafactory which is getting set up right now in China, and someone else is setting up a gigafactory in Europe or USA, there is only 5% difference. So I think what Indian government is doing it is they are giving almost a 20% buffer to the investors. And especially we believe that based on the sizing what government has prescribed, which is 5 to 20 gigawatt hour, the entire capacity can be taken up by as little as 3 companies, or maybe maximum 10, but we expect practically maybe around 5 or 6 companies will receive this. I think they almost have like a government sponsored insurance for most of the risk which they have to take. Obviously, they have to choose the right technology partner. They need to invest in setting a state-of-the-art manufacturing. And they also need to make sure that they keep at the edge, so that if there is something else is changing on the technology, then they can adopt to it. But otherwise, I think this is the best opportunity. And again, it is a completely biased view because I'm one of the authors of the program. But yeah, if there is something which I missed out,
absolutely.
Still have opportunity for next one week to complain about it.
Me coming from a manufacturing background, we've already missed 2 buses. The semiconductor manufacturing bus in the 80s, the solar manufacturing bus in 2000. So we should this one. Mayank.
So now if you run, then we can still catch this bus. It has already left the bus stop, but we can still run fast and try to catch it, get on board.
Professor Abhyankar, I'll come to you because you raised your hand. Mayank.
No, so I think quick thing. I mean, maybe a little again, a little counterpoint I'll offer. So see, investing in manufacturing is again a big policy decision, and I think as you said,
it's more of a commitment.
But it's also, see, for a country like India, it's also a commitment for a particular manufacturing incentive, right? So I think it's a call of, for example, $1, whether you give that as an incentive to battery manufacturing or you give that as $1 to solar manufacturing, which I'm sure, Ivan, you would be vying for in your other hat. And, even maybe a textile or, anywhere else, right? So it's a call that, frankly, I don't know if, we are best placed to take, because it's someone who has the full width of the country's requirement, which maybe goes back to maybe the PMO or maybe the NITI Aayog taking a view on that. But I would just say that the second point is that the demand for battery manufacturing is actually to a large extent being driven by, as William said, in a lot of other sectors as well. So it's not only the power sector which is driving it, right? So maybe there is a need for doing that in the other sectors as well. But the third point, and I'll quickly make that, is also the manufacturing. The point is that if there is if it's capital intensive manufacturing, right, we have to really think whether India will ever get competitive enough in the medium to short to medium term time frame. Right, where capital cost is, if capital cost is around 30% or 40% of your total cost component, capital is not cheap in India. So that you have to keep in mind when you think about again, that decision of which manufacturing to promote.
Right, great, fair point. I think manufacturing, the story is the same wherever the sector is. Professor Abhyankar, is there a business case for manufacturing in India?
Well, I think Mayank has covered what I wanted to say. It's not only about power systems. There are other domains also where storage is required. So yeah, we have to take a holistic picture. That's the limited point.
Thanks. Professor Chu, you also wanted to make a point here. So do you think there's a business case for manufacturing?
I think everybody wants to say something. This is such an exciting topic. And I think, I offer the perhaps independent view here. I think India should definitely go for it. I think I can think of two reasons. This is why this is important. One is the integration of the supply chain, and two is the integration with the demand. India, I think, could be very unique in both. Let me talk about the integration with the demand part. As I mentioned, for manufacturing and technology to thrive, you really want to have multiple markets. India has a very unique market in transportation and in stationary storage at the same time, in a way that is very differentiated from other markets. For example, in Europe and in the United States, and to some extent in China, there's a focus on high performance batteries. But high performance batteries might be great for a premium electric vehicle, but it is not very useful for grid applications. So think about your high performance, NCA batteries and other new technology coming online. It's not going to bridge the two. However, the sensitivity to cost, for example, for transportation in India could place more emphasis on very low cost battery, but maybe a little bit different in the performance spectrum. Maybe you don't need to look for that, 300 or 500 kilometer.
Absolutely.
So I think that one very big topic is India might be well positioned to develop the low cost battery technology that sits happily between grid and transportation in a way that other markets do not have the driving force for. And then the first point is the integration. Lithium-ion battery, for example, is still very heavy. So the dollar per kilowatt is a very important consideration here. I'm sorry, lithium-ion battery actually has the weight doesn't matter that much, right? In the sense of the total cost of manufacturing. But as the cost comes down, the cost of transporting will become very crucial. And this is why you're seeing factories being built next to EV factories. For example, right here in Nevada for Tesla. So as the cost goes down, then the need for integration for the supply chain will increase. So I think I see this really huge opportunity in this happy medium between grid storage and transportation in India. And I think perhaps only India could tackle it with the full force that is needed. So I'm extremely excited and bullish on this topic.
Great point. Professor Mitra, just coming back to you, you've been a technologist and on chemistries. Do you think there's a business case for manufacturing in India?
Yeah, I believe that there is a case, but there is a economy also behind it. So that's why maybe the reason people are not interested. But I always feel that value addition is very important. So if you're not interested on this downstream, then only focuses on downstream, then maybe local value addition, dependence on technology and like imports will be the main things, and we'll be using. But there is a bigger question: when we are ready, or when we'll be starting. And I'm okay with the Rahul that we are already late. I think 2-3 years back we should start. You can see in Europe we already started. We're supposed to start with the time of Europe when starts. China is okay, well ahead of us, but Europe we could have taken, but we are still waiting list.
Fantastic. Okay, we are just coming to the last 5-6 minutes of the panel discussion. This is quite engaging, and I'm really enjoying this discussion. So last couple of questions to go around, and my next question is on safety systems and quality control, which always is a big subject when you talk about deployment strategies. And already there has been some work that has been going on setting up separate standards, Indian standards for safety and regulation. And how important is safety, and why should we be concerned about quality control of critical BESS components? Maybe we'd like to hear from Dr. Reddy and and William on this. William, just because of your the combined depth of knowledge that's available in StorageX, and you specifically working on designing such large-scale systems. So please go ahead. And Dr. Reddy, in terms of what the government's point of view is on this subject.
So safety is the major thing actually. What we see, the battery is it's like a very dangerous item in the plant, okay, wherever it is located, and we have seen and we have seen some incidents also, maybe in the news or somewhere, that some incidents happening, the burning of the lithium-ion batteries and all. And what we are seeing is that the integration is the major thing, where the proper matching of cells to be current of the cells to be there. Nowadays many integrators are coming into the market. We have to keep an eye on that. So integration standards we have to focus actually. Anyway, battery suppliers, they do have their own standard. They follow the what I mean that they follow their standards actually, manufacturing standards. But only the integrators where they do integrate the batteries and making battery packs, that is the major thing. And thermal runaway is one of the critical one also. That also we are taking care in our tenders. We are taking care of all the safety standards in our tenders. As you mentioned, I think BIS also is working on Indian standards for the Indian conditions. It is quite important, not only for the solar or grid level storage, and also for the EV level storage also. So we also see that storage is a critical thing, and also the disposal. That is again a major thing we need to work actually here.
Yeah. Will, what's your input on safety and storage, safety of storage?
I think I agree with everything Dr. Reddy said. It's extremely crucial, if not one of the most essential topic. Safety issues have taken down very large companies in the energy storage area. There are many examples just in the past 10 years. So the importance cannot be overemphasized. In terms of the Indian context, I think there are several aspects. The regulatory aspect, developing the safety codes necessary that's specific to India, I think it's going to be a very formidable task. So I think in this sense, having the necessary expertise and people to do it will be important. So I think this is where university has a very crucial role to play in training the folks that will become the developers and testers of safety systems. I think in terms of the technology aspect, safety actually has a very large market in itself. The safety could be manifested in the software, how you control the energy storage technology. You can also think about technology on the chemistry side. So for example, here at Stanford, many of our colleagues are working on safety solutions. So how do you make the battery safer? And I think at the end of the day, I want to come back to the cost. What is the additional cost you must pay for a safer battery? Right now, you're not given that option. But once you know what the cost is, well, if I pay 20% more, I can get a very safe battery. And this becomes a very interesting economic driver. And deployment and companies looking at investing then can think about, well, I want to pay for a bit safer battery, but a bit lower technology, maybe lower performance metric. And there's really good example already. For example, lithium iron phosphate-based batteries are not as high performing as, say, the nickel-based chemistry and the cobalt-based chemistry, but it is safer because it's based on a lower voltage window. So once you understand the safety trade-off, that will become quite apparent as well. So I think the knowledge here is really key.
Thank you. Thanks, Will. I think we've just have time for one last question before we go open it for the audience question. And that brings us to the initial question that we asked, which is storage the silver bullet? Maybe just 30 seconds from each of the participants, and I invite all of you to put in your thoughts on this. And Professor Mitra, we can start with you. Do you think storage is the silver bullet? And do we need to fire that silver bullet now?
Yeah, sure, we should do it, but we should look for a large storage option like maybe compressed air more in India, which is not, I don't see any research is going on right now. But a large scale, if you look at like a beyond like 100 megawatt, you should look for some storage technology, which not the based on electrical storage technology.
Great.
And yeah.
Yeah. So let's move to the next. So Rahul,
no, I think, yeah, it is actually really a high time for this. This is a question like what we ask like with cars, right? Like, do you need the safety seat belt and airbags, or do you only want this when people are really rich? So this is something I think as we are heading, we know what direction we are heading, what speed we are heading. Now, if you want to wait and for a few more casualties, then you can delay it further. But otherwise, I think it is required. And basically, we know 5 years down the line how many gigawatt hours of storage deployment is required. We are not going to be able to build that just by waiting and sleeping for 4 hours. We need to be working every day. We have already lost last 4 years, and I hope that companies like ReNew can take a lead. This is what happened in US with companies like AES, Res America, NextEra, who were the leading renewable developers. They started making the investments in storage and deploying, and the work which they did, that ended up giving confidence to the regulators and policymakers. Otherwise, you keep on like blaming the other party for not having something. And I think in India, the pace at which, if you really want to become the developed economy, we want to move towards manufacturing. Power quality is something which is important. We cannot just have a crappy power quality with 2 rupee power. We cannot set up manufacturing. So yeah, I think it is absolutely essential.
Great. I hope, I hope we definitely fire that bullet soon. Professor Abhyankar, 30 seconds. Is storage the silver bullet that we need for large-scale RE penetration?
Yeah. So yeah, I'll express my views at the risk of being bad boy of this group.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So there's no doubt that we need increasing quantum of storage as we go on adding renewables. I'm talking about utility scale storage. The moot question is how much and when, right? Now, we have to understand that by investing in battery storage, we are essentially investing in flexibility of the grid, right?
Right.
Now, we must ask ourselves a question. Till now, till how much time would the flexibility associated with existing resources in India would continue to serve us satisfactorily? So this is the question that we have to answer. I'll just give you one quick example, 15 seconds. So if you remember event of 5th of April, there was a load drop of 30 gigawatts. And again, the same rise was there back to the same limit. The flexibility that was offered was of the order of exactly of the same order, 30 gigawatts with the downside ramps of 4,500 per minute, upside ramps of 3,000 per minute, right? Of course, this is not going to remain as it is. But then today, that means we have certain flexibility available with us. So we have to time coordinate the renewables and the flexibility that current established resources that we have. And then we have to have a comprehensive plan. That's my take on this. Thank you.
Thanks. Mayank, your opinion.
I think I completely agree with actually Professor Abhyankar. So I would say that I would echo what he's saying. Is it a requirement in the future? Absolutely. We have to be a little careful with how and when, and we have to let the economics play out. In my mind, I think if a developer believes that curtailment is, a little bit of curtailment is the right way to go for some time, maybe that is the right way to go. I don't need to add, storage adder for the full, year. I'm fine with maybe 5 days or 20 days of curtailment, but I'm saying just the economics should play out. That's
absolutely
the short answer.
Dr. Reddy, is storage?
My view is different. Actually, this is the high time to work on. Actually, so in couple of years, I think our RE capacity around 30 gigawatt will get added. So what Professor Abhyankar is saying, that flexibility may evaporate if we don't start right now, and it will take another 2 years to deploy the projects also. So what we feel, this is the right time to fire the bullet.
Great. Will, have a go.
Yeah, I agree with everything that has been said. I think the value of storage will increase exponentially as the deployment and the penetration of variable generation. So perhaps today the value is already good, but the value will be excellent 10 years from now. So I think the start of learning today is crucial. Maybe the technology will be different 10 years from now, but the adaptation of the grid, the availability of people to do it, you have to start now. So I think the timing could not be better.
Great. It was really, okay, Rahul, one last comment. You raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ivan. And sorry, Professor Abhyankar, since you mentioned as being a bad boy, I think I have to act as a professor here. With the case of example, what you gave with a 30 gigawatt drop on the Prime Minister gave a 1 week notice to the entire country and all the grid operators. The grid operators coordinated the effort for one 15-minute event by shutting down the entire wind generation half an hour before the event. Now, when you are looking at renewable integration, you are managing grid on a second-to-second basis. We are seeing right now on day-to-day basis, the grid frequency fluctuating between 49.65 to 50.3, which is unheard of. And the only reason I think we can live with it because most of the people don't see the second-to-second grid frequency and they only look at the 15-minute average frequency data. I think everyone in the industry suffers because of it. And it is a really, really high time we fix it and we don't have a single day to waste.
Thanks, Rahul. I think we've come to the end of the
I think Professor Abhyankar wants to say something.
Okay, sure.
We should give the bad boy another chance.
Absolutely. Yes, Professor Abhyankar.
Right. Yeah, Rahul, I agree with you. There is a difference between what you're saying and the example that you're quoting. I mean, the counter argument that you are putting up. No doubt, time was given to coordinate the activities. If you look at the numbers, by 2022, if we have 175 gigawatts, the required ramp requirement will be of the order of 1000 megawatts per minute. Today, we are serving around 400 megawatts per minute. Let's extrapolate this. If we have 450 gigawatts by 2030, the ramp rate requirement is going to be of the order of 2000 megawatts per minute. Okay. Now, in coordinated fashion, if you are able to pull up ramp rates of the order of 4500 megawatts per minute, if you can do certain level of coordination, calculation, and if you have plans ready with you, I think you can pull off, 2000 megawatts. I'm not saying batteries are not important. All I'm saying is there has to be time coordination with the kind of, renewables that is getting added. No doubt we have to start today. I agree with, all of you. But we have to look at the flexibility provided by the current resources, how long they're going to, help us. And then, sequencing should be done. That's the limit.
Great point. Yeah, so we have time for one audience question. And I think this has come from Mr. G.V. Venkatachalam from the Energy Department of Government of Karnataka. And he's asked the question that two questions. The prevailing market rates per megawatt installation of battery energy storage plant. What is the prevailing market rate? And the second question is, what is the maximum installed capacity of the battery energy storage in any utility in the country? So whoever wants to take the first question on the prevailing market rates per megawatt installation of battery.
Yeah, so around the world, we are seeing that the price points are coming down actually day by day. And again, this is usually a 2-year forward pricing. So right now, already we are seeing globally the price points for a 4-hour storage deployment at a complete system level, all in installed cost is coming below $250 per kilowatt hour. In India, obviously, with 30% import duties and other things, the landed costs go a little bit higher. But that's the price point if you're looking at like a new RFPs coming out, you can look at. And as Will mentioned, the price, this is with a sell prices somewhere around $120, $130. So in another 5 years, it is expected that sell prices will be half of it, plus some of the other things. So this price could go somewhere around $150 to $200 per kilowatt hour in next 5 years.
Thank you. The next question, probably Dr. Reddy, can you answer this? What is the maximum utility scale storage that has been installed so far in the country? Maximum size?
I think the battery energy storage is, I think only TPDDL is having around 10 megawatt. Apart from that, that is the maximum, I think, to my knowledge.
Thank you. I hope Mr. Venkatachalam has got his answers. Listen, I enjoyed this conversation as much as everybody did. I think it was a long discussion, but we tried to focus on most of the critical issues around this subject of storage, and really answering the question whether storage is a silver bullet. I hand over to Vaishali now, to our host of the evening. And Vaishali, your closing remarks, and we can end this roundtable.
Yeah, we always forget to unmute. Thank you so much. That was really fascinating. You know, so much learning in this hour and a half of action-packed conversation. I think these conversations are great when the right questions are asked and we have the right set of people who are there to answer them. So there's no doubt that this was brilliant. As I said, industry, academia, government, policy, everybody represented. And so it really, you know, made for a great discussion. You know, some of the, you know, comments I heard were, let the market decide. You know, and we asked a question on this panel as the topic, and we asked some important questions back. Should storage be at the grid or generation side, right? Each country has different needs. China and Europe may need high performance batteries, whereas India might not. What are we going to be doing about temperature and transportation, which is going to add to the cost? Are we willing to pay for it? How much? What? So a bit of economics coming in there as well. So safety, I mean, at ReNew, I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that safety is the absolute top priority. And I'm not surprised for storage, it is a critical issue. Lots of things to think about, lots of food for thought. And I just wanted to say that, you know, you need a facilitator to bring these conversations together, to bring people together, to debate, to think, to present information to each other. We at ReNew Foundation are committed to doing that. I know ReNew is super committed, so we look forward. Perhaps, I'm sure Ivan only touched the tip of the iceberg and he has many more questions to ask. And he will perhaps reach out to each one of you for some more time to continue this conversation in the new year, which promises to be and can only be a much better one than this year. I'd wish all of you a very happy next year. Stay safe, enjoy time with your families. And yeah, we look forward to meeting up again and carrying this discussion forward. Thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed listening. I always enjoy listening, and we'll come up with a report at some point and hopefully share it with all of you as well shortly. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was nice interacting, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.